Did George Russell really lose victory in Japan because of a simple mistake? Or did Mercedes cross a line that no one wants to admit? Because what happened in Suzuka was not normal. An inexplicable electrical failure, a pit stop at the worst possible moment, and just when everything pointed to Russell having the race under control, everything fell apart. And the strongest thing is not what happened on the track, but what he said afterwards. Russell exploded. And his words don't sound like frustration. They sound like a direct accusation within Mercedes. What happened to George Russell at the 2026 Japanese GP cannot be understood without reconstructing, step by step, how a race that seemed headed towards victory ended up becoming one of the most frustrating and suspicious episodes of his entire season. From the start in Suzuka, Russell had already been struggling with a problem that he himself made clear after the race. The feeling that everything negative was falling on his side of the garage. It was not an isolated failure, it was not a simple one-off error, it was an accumulation. And Japan was the breaking point. The start, as he himself acknowledged, was again poor, something that is already beginning to become a worrying pattern within Mercedes. However, what is really striking is that, despite that bad start, Russell managed to recover with solid, intelligent driving, climbing positions until he was placed in a key strategic situation within the race. And this is where the first big point of conflict begins. On lap 21, when the race began to open up strategically, Russell found himself in a privileged position, even leading momentarily. He had rhythm, he had control, and most importantly, he had room to decide his own strategy. But from the wall came an order that changed everything. Mercedes called him to the pits at that precise moment. The problem wasn't just the decision, it was the context. Russell was not convinced. His doubt, his resistance could be perceived on the radio. He wanted to stay out one more lap, extend the stint, play with the degradation and position himself better against his rivals. But the team insisted, and Russell obeyed. And that was the moment when, unknowingly, his career broke down. Because right after his stop, the safety car appeared after Ollie Behrman's accident. A devastating coincidence. If Russell had done what he asked, staying one more lap, he would have entered the track with the safety car, losing much less time and maintaining a completely different position in the race. In other words, that decision from the wall was not only questionable, it was decisive. But the worst was yet to come. Because when it seemed that the damage was already done, Mercedes carried out a second blow, this time much more serious and difficult to justify, an internal technical failure that would end up taking away any real chance of victory. The real scandal for George Russell did not end with that strategic decision. In fact, that was where the most serious thing of all began. Because when the race entered its decisive phase, when there was still room to reconstruct the result, Mercedes made an error that crosses a completely different line, the technical failure that changed the fate of Russell's career in a direct and brutal way. And the most shocking thing is not that it happened, but that the team itself publicly recognized it. As Mercedes management explained after the race, Russell's car suffered a failure in the software's electrical system, a system that had been specifically designed to give him a competitive advantage at key moments. But instead of helping him, he did exactly the opposite. It caused a completely abnormal power cut, a super clip, in the middle of Spoon Curve, at the worst possible moment. That failure drastically reduced the speed of the car without warning, leaving Russell completely exposed to his rivals. And it was there that he lost position on the track in a situation that had nothing to do with his driving, nor with tire wear, nor with strategy. It was an internal problem, a mistake by the team itself. And this changes absolutely everything. Because we are no longer talking about a bad decision from the wall, we are talking about a system that was created to improve the performance of the car, but that ended up directly harming the driver at a critical moment in the race. That is to say, Mercedes not only made a questionable strategic decision, but also took away any chance of recovery with a technical failure of its own. And this is where the narrative becomes even more tense. Because these types of errors are not normal in modern Formula One. Not in a team like Mercedes. Not in a situation of direct fighting for key positions. And much less when the team leader himself publicly admits that the system was the cause of the problem. We didn't cover ourselves in glory with George's career. That phrase is not minor. It is a direct admission of responsibility. But it also opens up a much more uncomfortable question. How many more errors have to fall on the same side before it stops being a coincidence? Because if we put everything together, bad start, strategic decision against what the driver requested, stop at the worst possible moment, and now an internal technical failure that causes him to lose track position, the sensation begins to be different. And that is exactly where Russell ends up exploding. Because it's no longer about a race. And it is at this point where everything ends up exploding for George Russell. Because after everything that happened, the strategy, the safety car, the technical failure, what really turns this episode into a before and after is not the loss of the victory, it is what Russell decides to say publicly. No filters. Without protecting the team. Without hiding anything. His words were clear, direct, and loaded with a frustration that goes far beyond Suzuka. Right now, I feel like the last 2 weekends every problem we have is on my side, and I am the one who suffers that pain. This is not a normal complaint. This is a message. An internal message, made public. Because in Formula One drivers don't speak like that by chance. Every word is measured, every statement has enormous weight within the team. And when a driver like Russell drops this in front of the media, what he is really doing is exposing a situation that can no longer be sustained indoors. He's pointing directly at Mercedes. And this is where everything changes dimension. Because we're no longer just talking about a lost race, we're talking about a breach of trust. From a driver who begins to feel that he is not on equal terms within his own team. From someone who, race after race, sees how problems, mistakes, and questionable decisions always fall on his side of the garage. And that, in a team like Mercedes, is pure dynamite. The big question now is no longer what happened in Japan. The real question is, what is going to happen from now on within Mercedes? Because when a driver starts talking like that, the story never ends on the track. What no one is saying openly but is already beginning to be felt within the paddock is that what happened with George Russell may have much deeper consequences than it seems. Because when a driver reaches this point, when he decides to speak like this, when he suggests that all the problems systematically fall on his side, the story stops being sports and becomes political. And in Formula One, that is even more dangerous. Inside Mercedes right now there is a silent tension that is not seen on camera, but that is built in every meeting, in every briefing, in every conversation between engineers and drivers. Because what happened in Japan forces the team to look inward, and that is never comfortable. Especially when there are big names at stake. Because if Russell is sending this message, what he is indirectly doing is questioning decisions of the wall, the technical team, even the management itself. And that generates something inevitable, internal divisions. Was the team wrong, or is there something else behind it? That is the doubt that begins to grow. And here comes a key factor that can mark the future of all this, the management that Mercedes does from now on. Because they have two very clear paths. The first, recognize the problem, protect Russell, correct mistakes, and rebuild trust quickly. The second, minimize what happened, treat it as an isolated incident, and let the tension continue to grow inside. If the latter happens, this can escalate very quickly. Because a pilot who feels that he has no support begins to change his way of acting. He begins to make more aggressive decisions, to question the team more, to trust orders less. And that completely breaks the internal dynamics of any team. And there is something even more important. Russell is not just any driver. It is the present, and potentially the future of Mercedes. And if these types of situations are repeated, if this feeling of everything falls on my side continues, Mercedes would not only be losing points on the track, he would be risking his sports project. Because in modern Formula One, teams don't just compete with cars. They compete to keep their pilots. And what happened in Japan may be the beginning of a crack that, if not corrected in time, may become much larger than many imagine. What happened to George Russell at the 2026 Japanese GP is not just a bad luck story, it is a warning. A warning that something inside Mercedes is not working as it should. Because when you put together all the pieces, the strategy that ignores the driver, the stop at the worst possible moment, the technical failure caused by a system designed by the team itself, and finally, public statements full of frustration, the result no longer seems like a simple coincidence. It seems like a pattern. And in Formula One, patterns always end up having consequences. Russell didn't just lose a victory at Suzuka, he lost something much more important, confidence. And when a driver begins to doubt his own team, when he feels that he is not being supported or that mistakes always fall on him, the situation becomes unsustainable in the medium term. Mercedes is now under pressure. Internal pressure, media pressure, and above all, the pressure of having to prove that this was not what many are already beginning to think. Because if these types of situations are repeated, this will no longer be a career problem. It will be a crisis within the team. And the most important thing of all is that this has just begun. Let me know in the comments what you think about all this.